It's not something that everyone thinks of, but if you've ever wondered what happens to new SUVs that never get sold, you're in the right place. While it's easier to assume that every car ever manufactured is destined to meet its rightful owner, it isn't the entire story. Behind the dealer lots, when people aren't watching, SUV dealers make big decisions that facilitate sales, entice customers, and make profit. While many of these SUVs eventually get sold, others go through a process that guarantees dealers their value in cash. Today, we'll be learning just how unsold SUVs leave the dealer's shop and how to get better deals off SUVs. The last one is sure to surprise you. Number 9. Price and incentives. When a new SUV sits on a dealer's lot longer than expected, the first thing that usually happens is a price drop. Dealers don't want cars to sit because every day a vehicle remains unsold, it costs them money. Most new SUVs are not paid for in cash when they arrive. Instead, dealers use something called floor plan financing. This is a short-term loan secured by the vehicle itself. Interest begins to build the moment the SUV lands on the lot. This is often within 30-45 days after delivery. That is, if it isn't sold quickly. Every day that SUV stays, interest accrues and the dealer's cost rises. Floor plan costs can run into tens of dollars per day per vehicle, depending on the size of the loan and prevailing interest rates. In recent industry reporting, average holding costs for new vehicles were documented at around $7.90 per day, even after slight reductions. And these costs climb sharply if turnover slows or interest rates rise. Because of this pressure, dealers will reduce the sticker price on SUVs that become hard to sell. These reductions follow a predictable rhythm. A car that has been on the lot for 60-90 days usually faces its first justified markdown. After 90-120 days, these discounts tend to deepen substantially until the dealer finds a buyer or another solution. Dealers don't do this by themselves. Manufacturers, whose brand reputation and overall sales figures are linked to every vehicle sold under their name, will often support these price reductions with targeted incentives. These incentives take several forms like cash rebates, bonus cash, and low or 0% financing. What looks like a buyer deal is typically less about generosity and more about financial necessity. Buyers might see an ad for 0% APR for 72 months or a $4,000 rebate, but these offers are often tied directly to a manufacturer's attempt to offset the dealer's rising floor plan expense and to protect broader sales metrics. In this stage, the vehicle is still technically new, but the terms around it are changing, pushed by financial incentives engineered to make someone, ideally a buyer, act before the dealer's costs grow deeper. Dealers and manufacturers both have motives here. For the dealer, the SUV is a ticking cost machine. For the manufacturer, slow-moving inventory not only affects the dealer's books, but also impacts national sales targets, residual values, and the public perception of demand for that model. The next stage of this video touches on what happens after incentives fail to move the vehicle. It's a point where the SUV might shift from new to something quite different. Let's dive into it. Number 8. Dealer-to-dealer sales. When slashing prices fail to find a buyer, dealers often resort to selling to other dealers. The SUV begins its quiet journey across regions, moving from one dealership to another in hopes of finding a market where it will sell more easily. In dealer-dealer sales, manufacturers and dealer networks track sales patterns closely, identifying areas where certain models are in higher demand. An SUV that fails to attract attention in a snowy northern city where buyers prefer smaller, fuel-efficient vehicles may be shipped to a Sunbelt region where larger engines and spacious interiors are more appealing. The logistics of such transfers are precise. Vehicles are shipped using enclosed carriers or flatbed trucks, and each move is recorded in inventory systems. Dealers in receiving markets are notified not only of the vehicle's arrival but of its age and any prior incentives applied. Even though the SUV changes location, its status remains new. It hasn't been driven for test purposes, and odometer readings remain low enough to preserve full manufacturer warranty. This quiet relocation is designed to maintain the appearance of desirability while simultaneously shifting the problem from one market to another. Market differences often determine the success of these transfers. Climate plays a role too. There's also fuel preferences, since areas with higher gasoline prices may avoid models with larger engines or lower fuel economy. Demographics matter as well. Younger buyers in urban centers may prioritize tech and compact size, whereas suburban families may favor space and towing capacity. An SUV that fails locally can suddenly appeal to a demographic it never reached initially. These transfers happen more often than not. In 2023, industry analysts reported that approximately 15–20% of unsold SUVs in the U.S. are moved between dealerships before being marked down further or reclassified. The cost of transport is usually absorbed by the manufacturer or negotiated between dealers, and it is typically less than the loss that would be incurred through deep price cuts on the original lot. In this way, the SUV retains its new label, and the dealer avoids signaling weakness in their local pricing structure. This process is more of a quiet management than it is a resolution. The SUV has not become more desirable. It has merely been relocated. Each transfer adds subtle pressure on the next dealership, which now faces the same risk of holding an aging vehicle. Dealers are aware of the pattern. Sometimes, a transfer can occur multiple times, especially if regional demand fluctuates seasonally or if the SUV sits through multiple production cycles. By moving inventory between dealerships, manufacturers and dealers maintain appearances, keeping vehicles technically new. Eventually, the SUV may reach a point where incentives and transfers no longer attract buyers, and the next stage begins. This is a stage where dealers must confront the reality of aging inventory in more permanent ways. What do? Keep watching. Number 7. Fleet sales. Fleet sales are bulk transactions with corporate, government, or rental companies. They are designed to move inventory quickly while maintaining the appearance of normal retail demand. The SUVs in these deals are still technically new, often leaving the dealer lot with only a handful of miles on the odometer, but their destination is fundamentally different. They are no longer destined for individual owners, but for fleets where individual choice and resale value matter less. Fleet buyers operate under entirely different considerations. Rental companies, for example, prioritize volume discounts, fuel efficiency, and maintenance predictability over aesthetic options or trim levels. In 2024, major U.S. rental companies such as Enterprise and Hertz reported that nearly 25% of their annual SUV acquisitions came from overstock dealer inventory, often at prices $3,000 to $5,000 below the standard MSRP. These vehicles are immediately registered under the company's name, often in bulk batches of 10 to 50 units, allowing dealerships to clear months of unsold stock in a single transaction. Government agencies and corporate fleets come in handy here. Cities and municipal departments purchase SUVs for public safety, inspections, or transportation purposes. Large corporations may acquire vehicles for employee programs or logistics support. Each purchase is negotiated, and these buyers are less sensitive to the retail pricing trends that affect brand perception in consumer markets. The result is a strategic exit route for vehicles that failed to attract individual buyers. While fleet sales provide immediate relief to the dealer's inventory and financial pressure, there are consequences. Vehicles sold to fleet buyers are typically registered immediately, which technically changes their status from new in the eyes of consumer registration records. Resale value is affected, especially when the fleet eventually rotates vehicles into the used market. A rental SUV, for example, may enter resale channels after 1 or 2 years with higher mileage and a fleet history, which can depress the perceived value for future buyers. Manufacturers support fleet transactions for similar reasons. By moving SUVs in bulk to these buyers, the public perception of demand remains intact. Price reductions that might appear on dealer lots for individual buyers are minimized, preventing widespread awareness that a model is slow selling. This approach protects brand image while also addressing the underlying problem, which is vehicles that do not sell in normal retail channels are still technically new, but are being redirected into markets where choice and brand prestige carry less weight. Economically, fleet sales can be highly effective. Dealers eliminate interest costs tied to floor plan financing, and manufacturers preserve national sales metrics. However, this stage also signals a subtle compromise. The SUV is no longer intended for the ordinary consumer, even if its condition suggests otherwise. It is a solution that clears space quickly, but one that quietly changes the vehicle's trajectory. As long as SUVs remain unclaimed by retail buyers, the next option becomes more drastic. Once bulk sales to fleets are insufficient, dealers are forced to consider measures that finally erode the new status entirely. Don't go anywhere. You're about to find out. Number 6. Foreign markets. Excess inventory doesn't always stay within national borders. For instance, it can be quietly redirected to foreign markets, where demand is stronger or supply is limited. Vehicles may be shipped to regions such as Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, or parts of Asia. In these markets, the same SUV that struggled to sell in its original country may be highly sought after, either for its features, brand reputation, or lack of local alternatives. Exporting begins long before a container ship or freight plane arrives. Dealers and manufacturers coordinate through logistics networks, tracking models by age, trim level, and regulatory compliance. Vehicles are inspected to ensure they meet the destination country's safety and emissions standards. For instance, certain countries in the Middle East allow SUVs with larger engines that are restricted in Europe or parts of North America due to fuel efficiency regulations. African markets may have high demand for SUVs with four-wheel drive and durability, which makes models that sat months in colder, urban regions suddenly appealing. Shipping costs are often lower than the potential loss from domestic discounts. Transporting an SUV overseas can range from $800 to $1,500 per vehicle, depending on distance and shipping method, but this is a fraction of the $3,000 to $5,000 in domestic incentives a dealer might otherwise apply. Manufacturers view this as an efficient way to balance global inventory while protecting the brand's image in its home market. By exporting, they maintain domestic pricing and avoid the perception that a model is failing. The moment the SUV arrives abroad, its journey is again carefully managed. In some countries, it can be sold as a new vehicle directly to consumers. In others, regulations or local registration processes may classify it as almost new, often with less than 100 kilometers logged. Exporting also allows manufacturers to hedge against seasonal and regional fluctuations. A model that overshoots production targets in North America can supplement shortages elsewhere, maintaining global supply consistency. This strategy carries subtle risks, though. Consumers in export markets may not be aware that a particular model was slow-moving in its country of origin, potentially creating buyer disappointment if the vehicle underperforms relative to expectations. If the vehicle cannot sell locally, it will find a market elsewhere, sometimes thousands of miles away, where its value remains intact only because it has been relocated. Up next, we see what happens when the SUV faces options that finally erase its new status entirely. Number 5. The auctioning ground. The auctioning ground is a last resort for many vehicle dealers. Not the auctions with casual buyers, but dealer-only or manufacturer-exclusive events, where unsold SUVs are offered to a network of professional buyers. This includes other dealerships seeking stock, exporters hunting for vehicles to send overseas, and fleet operators looking for bulk purchases at discounted rates. The auctions operate quietly, often online or at private facilities, with strict access rules. Participants must be licensed or verified, and the general public is excluded. Vehicles that fail to sell in retail channels are presented with detailed records. This transparency allows buyers to calculate the vehicle's value accurately. It also ensures that sensitive information about slow-selling models doesn't enter the broader consumer market. Prices at these auctions are typically lower than the original MSRP but higher than the scrap value. Auctioning allows dealers to liquidate inventory quickly, reducing floor plan interest costs that accumulate daily. It also provides an opportunity to move vehicles that may no longer fit current marketing strategies or production quotas. Manufacturers benefit by maintaining a measure of control over how these vehicles re-enter the market. By keeping auctions private, they prevent public perception of widespread discounts, protecting brand value and consumer confidence in pricing. SUVs that are close to reclassification as used often attract fleet buyers or exporters willing to handle registration and resale themselves. Models still considered new may end up on a dealer lot in a different state or country, restarting the cycle of sales attempts. In some cases, vehicles remain unsold at multiple auctions before the final, more drastic options are considered. Where vehicles still don't get auctioned and controlled channels cannot absorb the excess, There's yet another hack to get it off the market. Just when the SUVs have reached the limit of their dealer lot life, buybacks happen. Let's keep watching. Number 4. Repurchase and buybacks. A manufacturer buyback or inventory absorption is essentially when the manufacturer repurchases the vehicle from the dealer, removing it from the local lot and relieving the dealer of both the floor plan interest and the sales risk. These buybacks are usually reserved for extreme situations. If a model is underperforming nationwide or if a specific dealership faces unusually high inventory costs, manufacturers may decide that absorbing the excess themselves is the most efficient solution. By doing so, they prevent the negative consequences of prolonged stock, such as public price erosion, brand fatigue, or diminishing resale values. In practice, these repurchases are negotiated carefully, often at amounts slightly below invoice but above what the dealer could expect from auctions or fleet sales. Once the manufacturer takes ownership, the SUVs enter an internal management cycle. Some may be redistributed to other dealers in markets with stronger demand, echoing the regional transfer process. Others may be repackaged or reconfigured with cosmetic upgrades or new trim options, allowing the vehicle to re-enter the market with a fresh appeal. A portion may be exported to international markets, similar to the earlier export strategy, but with the manufacturer controlling all logistics and regulatory compliance. The buyback process also allows manufacturers to liquidate inventory internally when redistribution isn't feasible. This may include sales to large fleet operators or dealers via closed auctions, sometimes in batches larger than any local dealer could handle alone. By centralizing the movement of vehicles, manufacturers maintain control over pricing, market saturation, and brand perception. They avoid the appearance of desperation that comes with widespread dealer-level discounts, ensuring that even underperforming models do not undermine broader consumer confidence. Financially, the buyback strategy serves multiple purposes. For the dealer, it removes the burden of accumulating interest and frees up a lot of space for newer inventory. For the manufacturer, it protects the brand and preserves the value of its models, avoiding ripple effects in resale pricing or national sales reports. Vehicles that were once destined for retail buyers are now fully controlled by the manufacturer, and their future depends on internal decisions rather than market demand. Some SUVs will return to the public as new, while others may be absorbed into fleets, auctioned in bulk, or even reclassified for export. The action preserves market stability, but it also quietly underscores the reality that a vehicle's new status is fragile. Ultimately, manufacturer buybacks represent one of the last reserves in inventory management. And yet, even this failsafe has its limits. When inventory continues to accumulate beyond all available channels, another driveway appears. Here it is. Number 3. Demos, loaners, and secondhand. One of the most subtle ways of getting SUVs off the market is reclassifying them as secondhand or nearly new vehicles. The SUV may still carry only a few hundred or a few thousand miles, but its status shifts in ways that the casual buyer hardly notices. These vehicles are often repurposed within the dealer network. They might serve as demonstration models, allowing prospective customers to test drive the SUV. They may also become service loaners, providing temporary transportation to customers while their own vehicles are in for maintenance. In some cases, executives within the manufacturer or dealership may receive the SUVs for personal or business use. Each of these roles adds mileage to the vehicle, but typically only enough to remain under the threshold for certified pre-owned status. Once the limited use period ends, the SUVs are sold as certified pre-owned or nearly new vehicles. This designation allows dealers to offer the SUV at a discount compared to the original MSRP, while still preserving a perception of value and freshness. In 2023, analysis of CPO SUVs in the US showed that vehicles with less than 5,000 miles could be priced 10–15% below the factory price, which is higher than traditional used car depreciation, making it attractive to buyers who want a nearly new vehicle at a lower cost. This stage helps dealers find a balance. The dealership clears inventory, satisfies floor plan obligations, and recoups revenue, all while minimizing the public perception of slow sales. To a buyer, the SUV appears nearly new, warranty intact, interior spotless, and technology current. But the vehicle has already been cycled through multiple channels, sometimes traveled across regions or countries, and in certain cases served as a temporary tool for the dealership itself. For manufacturers, this relabeling also protects brand integrity. By converting unsold SUVs into certified pre-owned or nearly new vehicles, they prevent the retail market from seeing extensive markdowns or reports of slow-moving stock. It allows the company to maintain pricing power for new units, while still moving vehicles that might otherwise depress residual values if sold directly at discount. Yet, there is a quiet implication. Even when an SUV appears pristine and nearly new, it is no longer truly untouched. Its value, while preserved in perception, has been partially shaped by necessity rather than demand. Mileage, prior use, and the path through which it reached this stage subtly influence its longevity, resale value, and consumer satisfaction. The relabeling process may be invisible, but it is the final acknowledgement that a vehicle's journey as a brand new, unsold SUV has concluded, and it has entered a different, carefully managed chapter. In this way, nearly new or certified pre-owned status is both a solution and a signal. The SUV survives as a marketable commodity, but the invisible process behind its transformation is a reminder of the hidden pressures that govern the automotive industry. From this point forward, the vehicle no longer functions purely as new inventory. It now exists in a space defined by compromise, strategy, and quiet recalibration of value. Even when that fails, dealers don't back down yet. Number 2. Controlled storage. Even after price adjustments, transfers, fleet sales, exports, auctions, buybacks, and reclassification, some SUVs still do not immediately find buyers. In such cases, dealers and manufacturers may choose long-term storage as a strategic pause. Vehicles are carefully parked in controlled facilities, often under roof or in secure lots, to shield them from environmental damage and maintain their condition. The goal is not simply to hold stock, but to manage market timing, ensuring that sales occur when conditions are more favorable. Long-term storage is a deliberate response to market fluctuations. Auto sales can be highly seasonal, and consumer demand can vary with economic cycles, interest rates, and fuel prices. An SUV that sits unsold during a soft quarter may be stored for months, allowing manufacturers and dealers to avoid public price erosion. For example, a mid-size SUV that retails for $42,000 in a saturated market might be worth only $38,000 if discounted aggressively. By waiting, the dealer preserves both the vehicle's value and broader brand perception. Vehicles in storage remain technically new, with odometer readings unchanged and warranties intact. But the cost of storage, covering space, security, insurance, and periodic maintenance, accumulates over time. For high-volume dealerships, storing unsold SUVs can amount to hundreds of dollars per unit per month, a figure often weighed against the potential loss from early discounting. Manufacturers sometimes absorb part of these costs to protect national sales data or strategic launch plans for new model years. Once conditions improve, the stored vehicles are reintroduced into the market in one of several ways. They may re-enter as discounted new stock, targeted at buyers who were previously unwilling to purchase. Alternatively, they may be redirected into fleet sales or export channels, depending on demand in domestic versus international markets. This flexibility allows manufacturers and dealers to respond strategically rather than reactively, maintaining the delicate balance between inventory turnover and price stability. Long-term storage also serves as a subtle buffer for brand perception. By controlling the timing of release, manufacturers prevent the appearance of overproduction or weak consumer interest. Buyers see vehicles available at regular pricing, unaware that some of them have been held in storage for months, sometimes even spanning fiscal quarters or model year cycles. Yet, storage is not a permanent solution. Over time, vehicles lose some of their appeal simply because newer models arrive and consumer attention shifts to updated designs and technology. Dealers must eventually decide whether to release, reclassify, or redirect these SUVs, all while managing the associated costs and protecting perceived value. Ultimately, long-term storage is a strategy of patience and calculation. It delays the inevitable pressures of slow-moving inventory while preserving both financial stability and brand image. The SUVs remain technically new, but the pause signals that the market has dictated a careful, measured approach. The next step, if markets fail to absorb them, may be the final exit. It's a strategy hidden in plain sight but still shocking even to customers. Don't go anywhere. Number 1. Scrapping. Scrapping or selling for parts is a step taken only under extreme circumstances. After every other option, price cuts, regional transfers, fleet sales, exports, auctions, manufacturer buybacks, reclassification, and long-term storage have been exhausted. Scrapping occurs when the SUV is damaged beyond repair, becomes obsolete due to regulatory changes, or when the cost of continued storage and management exceeds the vehicle's residual value. Even in this scenario, the SUV rarely disappears entirely. High-value components, engines, transmissions, electronics, and even body panels are often salvaged and sold individually. This allows manufacturers and dismantlers to recover a portion of the vehicle's intrinsic value, reducing losses and supplying parts for maintenance of similar models already on the road. In some regions, particularly where environmental regulations are strict, vehicles are recycled in compliance with material recovery standards, ensuring that metals and plastics are repurposed rather than wasted. Full destruction of brand new SUVs is extremely rare but not impossible. Occasionally, regulations or strategic considerations, such as emission compliance, safety recalls, or an oversupply of a model year, can make scrapping unavoidable. Even in these cases, the process is controlled and deliberate. Automakers plan meticulously to prevent excess vehicles from flooding the market, which could undercut prices, dilute brand prestige, or disrupt dealer networks. The decision to destroy a vehicle is never spontaneous. It reflects a broader strategy that balances compliance, profitability, and long-term brand reputation. This final outcome highlights a structural order in how automakers and dealerships handle unsold inventory. The process begins with highly visible, consumer-facing strategies like targeted price reductions, seasonal promotions, and trade-in incentives. These measures aim to move units without damaging perceived value. When these tactics fail or are insufficient, the next layer involves industrial and institutional solutions. Vehicles may be redirected to fleet sales, such as rental companies or corporate clients, or offered in bulk at auctions. Some models are temporarily held in long-term storage facilities where they are maintained carefully to preserve conditions until demand rises or regulatory adjustments are made. At each stage, the vehicle is preserved, redirected, or reclassified to retain as much economic and brand value as possible. Even in scenarios where regulations mandate removal from the market, such as emission compliance deadlines or shifts in safety standards, the automaker often chooses selective dismantling. Parts like engines, transmissions, and electronic systems are salvaged for resale or reuse, while hazardous materials are safely recycled. Only when all alternatives, regional transfers, fleet absorption, auction sales, incentives, and manufacturer buybacks have been exhausted does full destruction occur. This systematic approach underscores the sophistication of modern inventory management. It reveals that what might seem like waste or loss is actually a carefully orchestrated chain of decisions. Every unsold vehicle is treated as an asset with potential, and destruction is the last, most controlled measure rather than a careless act. It demonstrates that automakers prioritize both regulatory compliance and brand integrity while maximizing financial recovery wherever possible, reflecting an intricate balance between market strategy, operational efficiency, and long-term brand stewardship. The sequence underscores a central truth. New SUVs almost never vanish quietly. They are rerouted, repurposed, and strategically managed so that even slow-moving stock maintains utility or perceived value. Whether through reclassification as nearly new, shipment to foreign markets, absorption by manufacturers, or final salvage, the SUV's journey is carefully choreographed. The path from dealership lot to end of life illustrates the lengths to which the industry goes to protect revenue, brand reputation, and market stability. By following this structured process, manufacturers ensure that each vehicle retains its potential, even in the face of overproduction or weak demand. The ultimate message is clear. Unsold SUVs are rarely lost, they are merely redirected, transformed, or delayed. moving through a hidden network of strategies that remain largely invisible to the everyday buyer. The story of the unsold SUV is not one of disappearance, but of careful, deliberate orchestration behind the scenes, a quiet choreography of value preservation that few consumers ever see. And that's how SUV dealers beat the market and make profit. All these dealing hacks we've seen are a peek behind the dealer lots and even the assembly lines to see how manufacturers and dealers collaboratively bring every SUV to its purpose. We can also learn how demand affects inventories and just what to expect when a brand doesn't perform well in the market. If this video just changed how you see purchasing vehicles, let us know in the comments. What dealing hack are you most likely to benefit from? Drop your answers below. Hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive into the hidden facts about your favorite shopping malls and food brand, because you need to be informed to shop better.